The shotgun blast echoed through the Kentucky hills like a thunderclap from God's own fury, splintering the old oak doorframe inches from Alexander's head. "Get out, you filthy sinner!" his father roared, the words laced with whiskey and Bible verses twisted into knives. In that split second, as shards of wood rained down like confetti from hell, Alexander realized love in his family had always been conditional, and his was the clause that broke the contract. Alexander Hayes had grown up in the shadow of the bluegrass state, where the air smelled of bourbon barrels and fresh-cut hay, and Sundays meant church pews packed tighter than a stockyard at auction. His family owned Hayes Whiskey Distillery, a rambling brick operation on the outskirts of Bardstown that had been distilling amber fire since his great-granddaddy's day. It wasn't just a business. It was the heartbeat of the town, the reason folks gathered at the local diner to swap stories over plates of biscuits and gravy. Alexander had been groomed for it since he could walk, learning to mash corn, taste the burn on his tongue, dream of one day signing his name on the labels. But dreams have a way of curdling when secrets spill. It started with Nicholas. Nick Riley, with his sun-bleached hair and easy grin, had been Alexander's shadow since Little League, when they'd steal bases and hearts in equal measure. Nick came from the wrong side of the tracks, his daddy a coal miner turned trucker, his mama waitressing doubles at the roadhouse, but that never mattered. They were kings of the creek banks, skipping stones and sharing whispers under the weeping willows. By high school, those whispers turned to touches, a hand lingering too long on a thigh during a football huddle, a stolen kiss in the hayloft that tasted like rebellion and rain. Alexander knew it was wrong in the eyes of the Lord, or at least, that's what Pastor Harlan preached from the pulpit every Sunday, his voice booming like Judgment Day. "The wages of sin is death," he'd thunder, and Alexander would shift in his seat, cheeks burning, while Nick shot him a wink that said, "Screw 'em all." But secrets in a small town are like moonshine in a dry county, potent and impossible to hide forever. It unraveled on prom night, of all godforsaken evenings. Alexander had mustered the courage to ask Sarah Jenkins, the cheer captain with the perfect curls, just to keep up appearances. Nick had drawn the short straw with Jenny from the debate team. The gym glittered with streamers and strobe lights, the air thick with Aquanet and teenage angst. Midway through Sweet Caroline, Alexander slipped out for air, heart pounding like a still running overtime. Nick was there, leaning against the brick wall, cigarette dangling from his lips like a dare. "You look miserable in that tux," Nick murmured, his voice low and teasing. Alexander laughed, bitter and broken. "Feels like a noose." Nick flicked the cig away, closing the distance in 2 strides. Their kiss was fire, desperate, all teeth and tongue, hands fisting in starched collars. For one blind moment, the world narrowed to the heat between them, the pulse of bass from inside thumping like a shared heartbeat. Then headlights swept the parking lot, and Jenny's squeal pierced the night. "Oh my God! Alex, with Nick," word spread faster than a brush fire. By Monday, the hallways buzzed with whispers, eyes darting like vultures. Coach pulled Alexander aside after practice, his face a mask of disappointment. "Son, this ain't right. You got talent, hell, you're MVP material. Don't throw it away on that. At home, supper was silent torture, his mother's fork scraping her plate like nails on a chalkboard. His father, Harlan Hayes Sr., big as a barrel, with hands calloused from decades of labor, didn't say a word. Not then. The explosion came a week later, After Alexander's tearful confession in the living room, the family Bible open on the coffee table like a loaded gun. I love him, Dad. It's not a choice. It's who I am. His mother's sobs were a dirge, her rosary beads clicking like accusations. But his father. Oh, God, his father. The man who'd taught him to ride a horse, to judge a barrel's age by its nose, rose like a storm cloud. Love? That's not love. Boy. That's abomination. The devil's got his hooks in you deep. The shotgun came from the hall closet, an heirloom from Grandpa's hunting days, pumped with a sound that still haunts Alexander's dreams. The blast was a warning. Not a kill shot would exploded, but so did their world. Alexander bolted that night, backpack slung over one shoulder, thumb out on Route 60 as semis roared past. Nick found him at the edge of town, idling in his daddy's rusted Ford. "Get in, you idiot," Nick said, voice cracking. They drove west, toward Louisville, then south to Nashville, hearts raw and roads endless. But even then, the fracture lines showed. Nick, ever the fighter, talked of coming out loud, of building a life unapologetic. Alexander, scarred fresh, just wanted to vanish. "I can't breathe here, Nick. It's killing me." They lasted 6 months in a cramped apartment above a honky-tonk, scraping by on Nick's mechanic gigs and Alexander's barista shifts. Nights were fever dreams of tangled sheets and whispered promises, but days were grindstone, bills piling like unanswered prayers. When Nick's temper flared over a bounced check, Alexander saw his father's rage in those green eyes. "We fight like this. We're no better than them," he'd say, packing his duffel one rainy dawn. Nick begged, on his knees in the doorway, rain mixing with tears. "Don't do this, Alex. We're all we've got, but fear is a cruel compass." Alexander hitched to Atlanta, then Chicago, shedding skin like a snake until he washed up in San Francisco, the city of fog and forgotten sins. The Golden Gate welcomed him with open arms, or at least, that's the story he tells himself. He crashed on couches in the Castro, dyed his hair blonde to match the boys who strutted in leather and confidence. Days blurred into hustles, waiting tables at a drag brunch spot, then interning at a boutique marketing firm that specialized in queer brands. Nights were hookups in dimly lit bars, chasing the ghost of Nick's touch, but waking alone with the ache of what-ifs. By 25, Alexander had clawed his way up. Hayes and Hale Marketing, ironic. That name now had him as junior partner, pitching campaigns for everything from rainbow flag tequilas to apps for discreet dates. He had a sleek loft in the Mission, filled with mid-century modern furniture and abstract prints that screamed, "I've made it." But success is a hollow crown when your phone never rings from home. Letters came sporadically, his mother's scrawled notes, pleading for forgiveness, enclosing faded photos of the distillery. "Your father misses you, son. The business. The struggling. Come home." Alexander burned them in the sink, the flames dancing like accusations. He dated, sporadically. There was Javier, the tattooed chef who cooked paella at midnight. Then Marcus, the tech bro with abs for days but a heart of code. None stuck. None saw the boy from Bardstown peeking through the cracks. Until the call came, 3 years to the day since the shotgun's roar. It was his sister, Lila, 32, married to a banker in Lexington, the golden child who'd stayed and towed the line. Her voice trembled over the line, tinny through the fog. Alex? Is bad. Dad's had a stroke. The distillery's drowning in debt. Tourists dried up post-pandemic. Suppliers jacking prices. We're losing it. All of it. He won't say it, but he needs you. We need you. Alexander's hand shook on the receiver, the city lights blurring below his window. Need. The word tasted like ash. Why now? Lila? After everything. Because you're the only one who gets it, the branding, the vision. Dad's too proud. And I'm sorry, Alex. For all of it. He hung up, poured a glass of bourbon. Not theirs, some artisanal crap from Oregon, and stared at the bottle. The prodigal son. Indeed. But this wasn't the Bible. This was America, land of second chances bought with blood money. By morning, he'd booked a flight to Louisville, the weight of home settling like dew on his shoulders. The airport smelled of fried chicken and regret, the kind that seeps into your pores. Lila waited at baggage claim, her hug fierce and fleeting, eyes red-rimmed. He looks old, Alex. Broken. The drive to Bardstown was a time warp, billboards for Churchill Downs, fields rolling gold under a merciless sun. The distillery loomed at the end of a gravel drive, its red brick faded, the sign creaking in the breeze, Hayes Whiskey, since 1892. Weeds choked the parking lot, and the tasting room windows were dusty as forgotten dreams. Inside, the air was thick with the ghosts of mash and memory. Vats silent, barrels stacked like tombstones. His father sat in the office, a shell of the giant who'd once loomed over him. Wheelchair-bound, left side slack, eyes sharp as ever but softened by defeat. "Boy," he grunted, "not quite a welcome." "Dad." Alexander's voice was steady. "A lie." Lila hovered, then excused herself to check on supper. Silence stretched, broken only by the tick of a grandfather clock. Harlan cleared his throat. "Didn't think you'd come." "Neither did I." A nod. Grudging. "Books are a mess. Lenders circling like buzzards. We need a Hail Mary, rebrand, tourism push, something viral." "You're the hotshot now." Alexander laughed. Sharp. "Hotshot. That's rich. Last time I was here, you tried to blow my head off." The old man's face crumpled. A rare fracture. "I was scared, son. Scared of losing you to that life. Thought I was saving you. Saving me? You nearly killed me." The words hung, venom sweet. Harlan's good hand trembled on the armrest. "I know. God help me. I know. Your mama prays for us both every night." Alexander turned away, throat tight. This was the hook, the pull of blood, thicker than the burn of regret. But as he toured the grounds, clipboard in hand, sketching ideas for a prodigal poor event, he felt the earth's tug. Home wasn't just the land. It was the rotgut in his veins, the hymns he couldn't unlearn. Then, like a thunderhead on the horizon, Nicholas appeared. Alexander was knee-deep in the barrel house, nose buried in oak and vanilla notes, when the screen door banged open. Heard the prodigal was back. Figured I'd see if the whiskey's improved, or if it's still as stubborn as its maker. Nick. Taller now, broader, with laugh lines etching his eyes and a flannel shirt rolled to elbows. Grease smudged on his forearms from Riley's auto down the road. His grin was a gut punch, same as ever crooked, knowing. Nick. Alexander's voice cracked like dry timber. In the flesh. He sauntered closer, the air charging like before a storm. Lila called. Said you might need a hand with the heavy lifting. They stood there, inches apart, the scent of him, motor oil and mint gum, flooding back years. Alexander wanted to punch him, kiss him, run. You stayed. Someone had to. Town's changed, but not that much. Nick's eyes darkened. Missed you, Alex. Every damn day. The confession landed soft, a feather in the dust. Alexander stepped back, walls slamming up. Don't. Not now. But Nick's hand caught his wrist, gentle as a prayer. Why'd you leave? Really? You know why. Alexander yanked free, heart hammering. We were poison. Fighting. Scraping. I had to go. Bullshit. You ran because you thought you weren't worth fighting for. Nick's voice dropped. I would have followed. Anywhere. The barrel house spun, memories crashing like waves. That night in Nashville. The rain. Nick's pleas. Alexander had buried it deep, but here it rose. Undeniable. I can't do this again. Not with the family hanging by a thread. Nick nodded. Slow. Then let's save him first. Friends. Alex. For old times. Friends. The word was a bandage over a gaping wound. But as they worked side by side, Nick hauling crates, Alexander brainstorming logos under the harvest moon, the old rhythm resurfaced. Laughter over lukewarm beers on the porch. Stories of city escapades met with Nick's wry tales of small-town scandals. One evening, as cicadas hummed their symphony, Nick brushed sawdust from Alexander's shoulder, fingers lingering. You look good, city boy. Grown into yourself. Alexander's breath hitched. And you? You're still trouble. Their lips met tentative, then fierce, a dam breaking after years of drought. It was everything. Forgiveness, fury, the sweet ache of homecoming. In the distillery's heart, surrounded by the spirits of their past, they reclaimed what was stolen. But paradise in Kentucky comes with thorns. Lila noticed first the lingering glances, the way Nick's truck idled too long in the drive. She cornered Alexander in the kitchen, flour dusted from pie making. He's bad news, Alex. Always was. Daddy's barely holding on. Don't drag this mess back in. It's not a mess, he snapped. It's me, she softened, sisterly. I know. But Dad. He's trying. For you. Don't make him choose again. The warning festered. Harlan watched them like a hawk, his grunts turning to glares. Progress on the distillery surged. Alexander's pitch landed a feature in Bourbon Review. Tourists trickling in for redemption runs. Bottles flew off shelves. Whispers of queer-friendly vibes drawing city folk. But undercurrents swirled. Nick confided one night, tangled in sheets in Alexander's old room. Your old man's asking questions. Hired a PI or some shit. Digging into my history. Alexander bolted upright. Sheets pooling. What? Why? 'Cause he sees us. Alex. And he's terrified you'll leave again. Rage boiled. The next morning, confrontation in the office, Harlan pale, clutching a dossier of printouts. Nick's arrests, bar fights. Nothing major. Flings post-breakup. Even a stint in AA. He's poison, son. Dragging you down. We need focus, family focus. You don't get to judge him, Alexander roared. papers scattering like confetti. You did that to me once. Shotgun and all. Nick's the best thing that's ever happened to this place, to me. Harlan's eyes watered, voice a wheeze. I'm trying to protect you. The business. It's all I got left. Protect or control? Alexander stormed out, slamming the door that echoed like that long-ago blast. The betrayal cut deepest from Lila. That night, over takeout Chinese in the motel where Nick holed up, she confessed via text, I gave Dad the tip about Nick. Thought it'd push you to stay clean. For the family. Clean. The word was a slap. Alexander forwarded it to Nick, who read in silence, then hurled his phone against the wall. See? This town's a cage. Let's blow it up, sell our shares. Start fresh in Cali. But Alexander hesitated, torn. The distillery wasn't just bricks. It was legacy, the burn in his blood. I can't abandon them. Not after all this. Nick's face hardened, the fighter emerging. Then you're choosing them over us. Again, the ultimatum hung, a noose tightening. Days blurred into frenzy, photo shoots in the fields, viral TikToks of Nick barrel rolling, carefully staged. Harlan's reluctant nod at the inclusive angle. Revenue spiked. Lenders backed off. Victory tasted like ash. Crisis peaked at the launch gala, under strung lights in the barrel yard. Bourbon flowed. Influencers snapped selfies. Harlan in his best suit toasting family resilience. Alexander stood with Nick, hand in his quiet claim. Then Lila's whisper, Dad's signing papers tomorrow. Cutting you out unless you end it. The world tilted. Alexander found Harlan by the fire pit, embers glowing like accusations. Is it true? The old man didn't flinch. You're my blood, Alex. But this is killing us. The town's talkin'. Investors balkin'. Choose him or the legacy. Legacy. The word was a chain. Alexander's voice broke. You or never learned. Love isn't a transaction. He walked away, straight to Nick, who waited by the truck. Stormy. I'm done running. But I'm not leaving without you. Nick searched his face, then pulled him close. Then we fight. Together. But Harlan's stroke, the big one, hit at dawn, as thunder rolled in from the Ohio Valley. Alexander found him slumped over the desk. Inkpot spilled like blood. Ambulance wailed. Hospital lights harsh as interrogations. Lila wept in the hall. Nick held Alexander's hand, unyielding. In the quiet hours, Harlan woke, tubes snaking, eyes clear for the first time. I was wrong, son. About you. About everything. A rasp, but real. Don't let my fear steal your joy. Tears fell. Forgiveness a flood. I won't, Dad. But we rebuild, all of us. Months later, the distillery thrived. Bottles etched with broken but bold. Alexander and Nick bought the old Riley place, turning it into a B&B for queer travelers. Harlan watched from his porch rocker, a faint smile his absolution. Home wasn't perfect. Scars linger like oak tannins. But in the burn of a shared sip, under Kentucky stars, it was enough. Love, turned out, was the real heirloom. Stubborn, golden, eternal. The afterglow of reconciliation faded faster than morning mist on the Bourbon Trail, leaving Alexander to navigate the minefield of mended fences and unspoken grudges. Harlan's recovery was a slow distillate, physical therapy in the church basement, where Pastor Harlan, no relation, thank God, now preached, "Love thy neighbor." No exceptions after a viral sermon on inclusivity that Alexander's team had quietly amplified. The old man grumbled through exercises, his good arm pumping dumbbells like he was mashing corn. But there were moments. A gruff "good job" on that Insta post, boy over breakfast, or a shared silence on the porch as fireflies danced like errant prayers. Nick, bless his reckless heart, dove into the fray with the subtlety of a moonshine runner dodging ravinours. He fixed the distillery's ancient delivery truck, welded new racks for the aging room, even charmed a podcaster into a From Heartbreak to Heritage episode that spiked online sales 40%. But his presence was a lit fuse in dry grass. Whispers slithered through Bardstown. Hayes boys shacked up with that Riley troublemaker. Reckon the whiskey's gone woke? At the feed store, old-timers averted eyes. At the diner, forks paused midair when they walked in hand. Alexander felt the weight, a yoke he'd thought shed in San Francisco. Late nights, after crunching numbers in the office, profits up, but margins thin as a bad batch. He'd collapse beside Nick in their creaky four-poster, the room still smelling of mothballs and memory. "You ever regret staying?" he'd murmur, tracing the tattoo on Nick's bicep, a compass rose, inked in Nashville the week after Alexander left. Nick's laugh was rumble deep. "Regret? Hell, I regret not chaining you to the bed that morning." His hand slid south, teasing, but his eyes were serious. "This is home, Alex. You, me, the crazy. Wouldn't trade it." Yet doubt gnawed. Lila's betrayal lingered like a hangover, her apologies flowery texts, invitations to sister spa days that Alexander dodged. She'd married into money, her life a spreadsheet of PDA meetings and country club brunches, but envy sharpened her edges. One afternoon, as Alexander tweaked the website in the tasting room, she swept in, heels clicking like judgments. "Dad's asking about succession. He wants you in, officially." "But, Nick, but what?" Alexander's tone iced over. "He's volatile. Remember that fight at the Roadhouse last month? Over nothing. Over a drunk calling him a slur." Alexander slammed his laptop shut. "He's family, Lila. More than you get." She flinched, mascara smudging. "I'm trying. For Dad. For all of us." But her hug felt obligatory, a transaction. The real storm brewed from afar, a corporate vulture circling the distillery. Vanguard Spirits, a faceless conglomerate out of Chicago, had sniffed weakness in the post-stroke chaos. Their offer arrived via courier, polished prospectus promising synergies and a fat check, but gutting the soul mass production, rebranding to some generic Heartland heat. Harlan stared at it during family dinner, fork hovering over pot roast. "They think they can buy our name. Like we're some startup." "No," Alexander said firmly. "We're Hayes. We fight." Nick raised his glass. "To fighting dirty." Then, the war room became the barrel house. Maps of distribution routes pinned to corkboards, laptops glowing with market data. Alexander pulled strings from his Cali contacts, queer influencers for authentic buzz, a collabo with a Nashville queer country singer for a limited edition bottle. Nick handled the grit, schmoozing suppliers for better rates, organizing a bourbon and brotherhood festival with drag queens pouring samples and line dancing to Dolly. Harlan contributed gruff wisdom, His stroke slurred stories of 80s droughts when they'd bartered barrels for survival. It was electric, this alchemy of old and new. One midnight, as they taste-tested a experimental rye infused with local honey, laughter echoed off the rafters. Nick dipped a finger in the glass, tracing it across Alexander's lips. Sweeter than sin. Alexander licked it off, heat pooling. Careful, cowboy. We're on the clock. Clock can wait. Nick pulled him into the shadows, where barrels loomed like silent witnesses. Their lovemaking was urgent, reverent, clothes shed in a trail, bodies slick against cool stone. Alexander arched under Nick's mouth, gasps mingling with the earthy tang of wood. I love you, he whispered, the words a vow etched in amber. Nick's response was a growl, possession and promise, as they crested together, the world narrowing to pulse and breath. But dawn brought interlopers. Vanguard's rep, a slick suit named Preston with a Rolex that screamed boardroom, arrived unannounced, touring the grounds like he owned them. Charming operation, he drawled, clipboard in hand. But scalability? Let's talk metrics. His eyes lingered on Nick, hauling a pallet, then flicked to Alexander with a knowing smirk. Heard you're the visionary. Progressive touch. Keeps the millennials hooked. Alexander bristled. It's not a touch. It's us. Preston chuckled. Us? The personal brand. Risky in these parts. The gauntlet thrown. Tensions spiked. Harlan confided in Alexander that night. Voice frail. He reminds me of my old self. Bull-headed. Blind. Don't let him win. Son. I won't. But as Preston's team dug into audits, discrepancies surfaced. Inflated supplier invoices from Lila's husband's firm. A consulting fee that smelled of kickbacks. Confrontation in the office. Lila tearful. Harlan thunderous. It was to keep us afloat. During the stroke, everything was chaos. Chaos doesn't justify stealing, Alexander said. Voice steel. You betrayed us. All of us. She crumpled. I was scared. Like Dad. Of losing it all. The fracture widened. Nick, overhearing from the hall, stormed in. Scared? Try living with a target on your back every day. His fists clenched. Veins corded. Preston, lurking outside, caught the tail end, smirk widening into a shark's grin. By week's end, the offer doubled, laced with poison. We handle the internal matters. Clean slate. Harlan tore it up. Over my dead body, but bodies break. The second stroke hit during the festival setup. Harlan collapsing amid hay bales and rainbow banners. Face ashen. Chaos. Ambulances. Cancelled bookings. Vanguard's vultures hovering with compassionate clauses. In the ICU, beeps a metronome of dread. Alexander gripped Nick's hand. Lila a ghost at the bedside. We can't lose him, she whispered. We won't, Nick vowed. But his eyes said otherwise, haunted, the fighter tiring. Alexander stepped up, channeling San Francisco steel. He rallied the town. A GoFundMe that went viral. Locals chipping in with stories of Hayes as lifeline. Pastor Harlan led a prayer vigil. Drag queens belting Amazing Grace in full glam. Preston called. Voice oily. Tragic. But business waits for no man. Sign. And we cover medical. Go to hell. Alexander hung up, then turned to the team. We go independent. Crowdfund the future. It was madness, equity shares for backers. A co-op model blending family legacy with community stake. Nick fronted the muscle. Lila the numbers, redemption arc. Tear-streaked. As Harlan stabilized, mumbling approval from his bed, the pieces aligned. But in the quiet, Alexander confronted the mirror. Lines etched deeper, eyes wiser but weary. Was this victory, or just another round? Nick found him there, dawn light slanting through blinds. You're carrying too much, Alex. Someone has to. Hiss. Soft. But not alone. Their rhythm steadied. Mornings of coffee on the porch. Harlan joining with his thermos. Grunts evolving to questions about that internet magic. Lila thawed. Babysitting for town events. Her daughter cooing at Uncle Nick. The distillery hummed. Tours packed. Bottles shipping coast to coast. Yet shadows lingered. Preston's parting shot. A leaked audit to the Bardstown Gazette. Headlines screaming Hayes scandal, embezzlement and excess. The town divided. Old wounds reopening. Nick snapped at a barfly's jeer. Fist connecting with jaw arrest. Mugshot. The whole ugly reel. Alexander bailed him out at 3 a.m. Rain sheeting the station windows. This is what they want, he said, voice breaking. To break us. Nick slumped against the wall, bruised knuckles. Maybe they're right. I'm the liability. No, Alexander cupped his face. Fierce. You're my strength. They drove home in silence. The road a black ribbon under wipers. In bed, it was tender, apologies in touches, forgiveness in sighs. But sleep evaded, doubt a third wheel. The climax crested at the town hall meeting, called to discuss the Hayes future. Vanguard proxies packed the seats, suits amid flannel. Harlan, cane in hand, wheeled in by Lila, defiant, frail. Alexander presented slides of growth, testimonials from queer couples who'd found solace in their out and oak events. This isn't just whiskey. It's story. Our story. Applause rippled, but Preston rose, mic in hand. Stories don't pay debts. And with Mr. Riley's indiscretions, he flashed the mugshot on screen, gasps rippling. Nick surged forward, but Alexander's hand on his arm held. Let me. He took the mic, voice steady as aged bourbon. Nick's fought for this town his whole life. Fixed your trucks, poured your drinks, loved without apology. If that's a crime, lock us all up. Pauses, breaths. I left broken once. Shotgun scars and all. But home called me back, not for the business, but for family. Real family, the ones who stay, who love loud. Eyes to Harlan, who nodded, tears glinting. Vanguard wants our name. We want our souls. The room erupted, cheers drowning jeers, hands clapping like thunder. Preston slunk out, tail between legs. Harlan pulled Alexander into a hug, bones fragile but grip iron. Proud of you, son. Of both of you. Later, under stars pricked like promises, Nick and Alexander walked the fields, hands linked. We did it, Nick said, wonder soft. We, Alexander leaned in, kissed salt sweet. The future stretched, uncertain but there's whiskey flowing, love undiluted. Victory's high was fleeting, a quick pour that leaves you thirsty for more. The town hall triumph made headlines, Courier Journal splash. Bardstown battles big biz. keeps spirit local, and orders flooded in, crates stacking like cordwood. Alexander's phone buzzed non-stop, Cali clients pitching collabs, Lila forwarding RSVPs for a Haze Pride Pour expansion. Even Harlan cracked a joke over checkers, his pawn toppling with a wheeze. Checkmate, you queer genius, but elation masked fissures. Nick's arrest hung like a Bad Batch community service at the food bank, where he ladled soup with a scowl that softened only for the kids. Feels like penance, he'd mutter, sleeves rolled, tattoos peeking like secrets. Alexander volunteered alongside, stirring pots while fielding calls, their glances across Steam a private code, we're okay. Not entirely. Dreams plagued Alexander, the shotgun blast morphing into Preston's smirk, Nick's face twisting to his father's rage. He'd wake gasping, Nick's arm anchoring him. Just ghosts, Nick soothed, lips to temple. But ghosts whisper, and doubt echoed. Can this last? In this town? With these people? Lila's redemption arc stuttered. She threw herself into the business, revamping accounting, her spreadsheets a fortress against scandal. Over coffee at the diner, post-meeting, she slid a folder across the formica. Cleaned house. No more funny business. Her smile was tentative, olive branch extended. And therapy. For me. For us. Alexander flipped pages, numbers aligning like forgiven sins. That's big. Sis. I see it now. What you and Nick have, it's real. Dad's coming around too. Slowly. Harlan's thaw was glacial but genuine. One Sunday, he shuffled into church, first time since the strokes, settling beside Alexander and Nick in the back pew. Pastor Harlan's sermon on the prodigal son landed different. God's love ain't earned, it's given. No conditions. Harlan's hand found Alexander's knee, squeeze brief but seismic. Afterward, to potluck, he clapped Nick on the back. Heard you fixed Widow Jenkins' Chevy. Owe you a bottle. Nick blinked, grin splitting. Make it two. Harlan. Progress. Inch by inch. The distillery evolved. A pride flag fluttering beside the American. Ally Alish Knights drawing crowds from Louisville's scene. Alexander helmed it all, jetting to trade shows in Vegas, where neon drowned nostalgia. Nick stayed grounded, expanding the B&B, Riley's Rest, whiskey and welcome, into a haven, rooms booked by couples escaping Bible Belt belts. But distance breeds drift. A week in Sin City, Alexander texted flirty pics. Him in a sequined vest at a mixer, bourbon in hand. Nick's replies lagged. Miss you, cowboy. Then silence. Back home, the air crackled. Nick waited on the porch, beer sweating. Saw the posts. Lookin' cozy with that bartender. Alexander laughed, dropping his bag. Jealous? It was networking. Networking. Nick's jaw ticked. Or chasing the high life again? The accusation stung. Old wounds reopening. What the hell? Nick, I'm here. For us. For this. Are you? Or just slumming it between gigs? Nick paced, voice rising. I see you, Alex. Itching for the city lights. The easy acceptance. Alexander's temper flared. San Francisco steel sharpening. Easy? Try building from nothing. Alone. Because the man I loved couldn't handle the fight. Nick recoiled, face ashen. I fought. Every day. While you ran, the porch light buzzed. A third heartbeat. Silence stretched. Then Alexander stepped close, hands framing Nick's face. I'm not running. But I need you to trust, to fight with me, not against. Nick's exhale shattered. Scared of losing you. Again. Their kiss was apology, slow, deep, bodies aligning like barrels in rack. Inside, they mapped peace. Date nights at the creek. No phones. Couples counseling with a Lexington therapist who got the queer rural grind. It stitched them tighter. Threads of vulnerability weaving strength. Then betrayal's shadow lengthened. Vanguard hadn't slunk away. They'd pivoted, courting Lila behind closed doors. Alexander stumbled on it during a late-night audit, emails in her trash folder. Discreet discussions about a minority stake. Personal incentives. Heart-pounding. He confronted her in the tasting room, glasses clinking like accusations. Lila? What is this? She paled, folder crumpling. It's not, they approached me. Said Dad's health. We need security. Security? Or greed? Pain lanced. After everything, you're selling us out. Tears welled. I'm protecting. You flit in with your ideas. Nick's drama. I'm the one holding the line. Line? You're crossing it. Alexander walked out, slamming the door on her sobs. Harlan, eavesdropping from the hall, called a family summit. Wheelchair to the office. Voice thundered despite frailty. Girl, you disappoint me. To Alexander, son, she's family. Fix it. But fixing meant facing the rot. Nick, briefed over whiskey, paced like a caged wolf. Kick her out. Let her sink with the suits. No. We heal. Alexander's resolve hardened. Or we become them. The mediation was raw, therapist zooming in. Lila spilling fears of irrelevance. Her marriage cracking under financial strain. I thought, if I secured something, we'd all win. Alexander softened, hand over hers. Winning together means trust. No secrets. She nodded, deleting chains. Vanguard's offer evaporated, but trust's rebuild was tentative weekly check-ins. Shared shifts. As autumn gilded the hills, a new conflict brewed, Nick's past resurfacing. His ex, Tommy, a roughneck from coal country, all beard and bitterness, rolled into town, fresh from parole. Whispers at the bar. Tommy sniffing for a score, eyes on the distillery's cash flow. One night, he cornered Nick at Riley's, breath boozy. Heard you're playing house with the rich boy. Need a real man to remind you. Nick shoved him out, but bruises bloomed, lips split, ribs tender. Alexander found him icing it in the kitchen, rage simmering. Why didn't you tell me he was back? Didn't want to worry you. Nick's deflection cracked. Tommy's poison dragged me into bad shit young. AA was my out. Alexander bandaged him, gentle. You're not that kid anymore. But we face it together. Tommy's harassment escalated. Slashed tires. Anonymous tips to the paper reviving the arrest. The town, newly allied, rallied, Pastor Harlan denouncing hate's hangover from the pulpit. But internally, it eroded. Nick withdrawing, nights at the garage till dawn. The breaking point came during a storm, thunder rattling windows like divine discontent. Alexander tracked him down, rain-lashed, wrench in hand under the truck's hood. Talk to me. Nick hurled the tool, clang echoing. I can't. You'll see me as broken. The town drunk son. The screw-up. Alexander pulled him into the downpour, soaked, unyielding. I see you. The man who stayed, who loves fierce. Let me in. Under the torrent, confessions poured, Tommy's abuse, the shame that fueled Nick's fire. Alexander held him as sobs racked, rain washing clean. You're enough. Always were. They emerged renewed, reporting Tommy, restraining order, exile. The distillery's holiday launch loomed. A beacon, Yuletide yield, mulled bourbon and carols with a queer twist. Harlan toasted at rehearsal, eyes misty. To family, blood and chosen. But as lights twinkled, Alexander felt the pull. A job offer from a Napa winery. 6 figures. Creative freedom. Nick spotted the email open on the laptop. Going? Not without you. But the seed planted, temptation's whisper. The holiday launch was a triumph wrapped in tinsel and temptation. The barrel yard aglow with lanterns strung like fallen stars. Air rich with clove and cinnamon from steaming vats. Folks poured in from Lexington to Louisville. Families in ugly sweaters. Queer couples in fur-lined hoodies. Even a bus from Cincinnati's scene. Nick manned the fire pit, roasting chestnuts with a grin that masked the shadows, while Alexander emceed, voice warm over the mic, haze whiskey, where broken barrels make the boldest pour. Harlan, bundled in a wheelchair blanket, raised a glass. Is here. Here. Slurring into cheers. Lila redeemed further, her pie stall a hit, daughter toddling at her feet. See? We're unbreakable, she whispered to Alexander amid the mulled madness. He hugged her, but the Napa email burned in his pocket like contraband. 6 figures, vineyard views, a team of yes-men. Escape the small-town squeeze. Promised. Nick caught him staring at the hills later, snow dusting the ridges. Penny for your thoughts? Just. How far we've come. Half-truth. Heart heavy. The new year dawned crisp. Resolutions etched in frost. The distillery hit record sales. But cracks spiderwebbed. Supplier shortages from supply chain snarls. A viral TikTok backlash from conservative corners. Woke whiskey ruins Christmas. Dipping online buzz. Alexander countered with grit. Podcast circuit. A resilience reserve, limited release tied to mental health charities. Nick supported, but distance grew, his shifts at the B&B stretching. Alexander's late nights in the office. The Napa whisper became a roar during a solo trip to Chicago for a spirits expo. Glittering halls, deals inked over oysters. The rep, a silver fox named Ellis, leaning close at the bar. Your Bardstown story's gold, Alex. But imagine scaling it here, global, no holds barred. His hand brushed Alexander's knee, casual but charged. Jet lag and loneliness blurred lines. A kiss in the elevator, fumbling to the suite. Morning regret hit like a hangover. Ellis's cologne on the sheets, guilt a vice. Homebound flight, Alexander confessed piecemeal. The offer first, then the slip. Nick listened in the kitchen, coffee mug gripped white-knuckled. Slipped or sought? Sought comfort. Stupid. Selfish. Tears pricked. But I choose us. Always. Nick's silence stretched, pain etching deep. I knew you'd tire of this. The stairs, the struggle. Go. Be free. No. Alexander knelt, desperate. You're my freedom. Reconciliation was rocky, counseling double sessions. Nick's trust a fragile flask. Harlan sensed the chill, pulling Alexander aside post-therapy. Love's like whiskey. Sun takes time to mellow. Don't let pride sour it. Advice heeded. They rebuilt. A weekend getaway to the Red River Gorge. Hiking trails hand in hand. Campfire confessions under canopy. I was scared, Nick admitted, embers glowing. Of not being enough for your big dreams. You're my dream. Alexander's vow sealed with a kiss. Stars witnessing. Spring bloomed betrayal anew. This time from Harlan's circle. Old friend Buck, the banker who'd loaned against the distillery, confessed over poker night. Vanguard's tendrils via backroom deals. Papers primed to foreclose if sales dipped. Thought I was helping. Harlan. Stabilizing. Harlan's fury was apoplectic. Another mini-stroke looming. Monitors beeping in the ER. Alexander paced the hall. Nick a rock beside. We sue. Expose them. Lila. Redeemed steel. Dug records. Got the proof. Embezzlement trail leads to Buck and a shell company. The lawsuit launched. Headlines flipping. Local legend fights corporate coup. Town rallied harder. Boycotts on Vanguard brands. Murals of hay bales and rainbows on the co-op wall. But toll mounted. Harlan bedridden. Spirit flagging. Nick's AA meetings doubling. Tommy's ghost in every trigger. Climax brewed in summer swelter. A heat wave cracking the earth. Vanguard countersued for defamation. Depositions dragging like molasses. Alexander testified. Suit starched. Voice steady. They want our soul for their spreadsheet. Nick's turn was brutal. Past raked over. Slurs veiled as character concerns. He cracked post-hearing. Vanishing to the creek till dusk. Alexander found him skipping stones. Boyish again. Can't do this, Alex. They're right. I'm the weak link. Bullshit. Alexander waded in. Water cold. You're the fire. Without you, it's just smoke. Their embrace turned fervent. Clothes discarded on the bank. Bodies merging in the current, raw, reclaiming. Fight with me, Alexander gasped. Nick's name a litany. I will. Promise etched in sweat and stream. The trial peaked in fall foliage. Courtroom in Louisville a pressure cooker. Preston on stand. Slick as ever. Hayes is obsolete. Emotional. Not economical. Alexander's cross. Emails. Ledgers. Lila's testimony a dagger. They preyed on vulnerability, strokes, scandals. But family endures. Jury deliberated 2 days. Verdict. Hayes wins. Damages awarded. Vanguard retreating with tail singed. Cheers erupted. But Alexander's joy muted. Harlan too weak for celebration. Nick withdrawn into service shifts. Post-trial. Fracture deepened. The Napa offer renewed. Ellis's email. Doors open. With perks. Alexander deleted. But Nick saw the draft reply. Confrontation in the barrel house. Echoes hollow. You're writing it? After everything. No, I was declining. Lie exposed. Trust shattering. Nick's eyes stormed. Liar. Go. I won't chain you. I don't want to go. Alexander roared. I want this, home. Then prove it. Nick walked out. Door a gunshot. Days blurred. Harlan's decline accelerating. Pneumonia setting in. Alexander nursed him. Stories of youth swapped for confessions. I failed you, son. With the gun. The hate. Forgiven. That. Long ago. But Harlan's grip weakened. Eyes distant. Nick returned for the vigil. Hand in Alexander's at bedside. He's fighting. Harlan rallied briefly, dictating will, distillery to Alexander and Lila joint, with Riley's blessing, a wink, final. Then, in moonlight, he slipped away, peaceful, hot roast scent lingering. Funeral was a river of black amid gold leaves, eulogies blending Bible and bourbon. Pastor, Harlan Hayes, flawed, fierce, finally free. Lila clung to Alexander. He loved you. Us. Graveside. Nick's arm around him. Anchor. But grief unearthed rot. Alexander, packing Harlan's office, found letters old to Nick's father, pleading for the boy's salvation. Betrayals echo. That night, storm raging, Alexander confronted Nick. You knew about the letters? Nick nodded, rain-lashed. Found 'em years ago. Didn't want to hurt you more. Everything's a secret. Alexander shoved him. How do I trust? You don't. You choose. Nick's voice broke. Like I chose you. Every time. The fight crested, words like lightning, past pains hurled. Then silence, broken by sobs. They collapsed together, grief a glue. I choose us, Alexander whispered. Burn the letters. Build new. Dawn broke. Covenant renewed. Winter wrapped Bardstown in a hush. Snow muffling the world's clamor as Alexander and Nick buried Harlan not just in earth, but in legacy. The distillery paused operations, a week of black armbands and quiet pours, then roared back with Harlan's legacy reserve, a bold rye aged in charred oak from his favorite barrels. Tastings sold out, proceeds to the local LGBTQ center. Harlan's final nod from beyond, acceptance etched in alcohol. Lila stepped up, co-manager now, her edge honed to ally. Dad would have hated the fuss, she'd say, sorting labels, but her eyes shone pride. The betrayal scar faded to lessen. Family therapy glued the shards, sessions ending in hugs over pie. Nick and Alexander's rebuild was deliberate, a slow mash. No grand gestures, just mornings tangled in flannel, coffee brewed strong, evenings walking the snow-draped fields, breath clouds mingling like prayers. Counseling unpacked the Napa ghost, Alexander admitting the allure of ease, Nick voicing the fear of abandonment. We're not them, the therapist said. You're writing your own proof. They did. The B&B thrived, hosting whiskey weekends for queer creators, writers penning manifestos by the fire, artists sketching under willows. Nick led hikes, his stories of Creek Kings captivating, while Alexander curated tastings, pairing drams with tales of shotgun scars turned triumphs. One guest, a poet from Brooklyn, captured it. Here, love ferments, tart, then transcendent, but humaneness demands humanity's mess. Spring thawed doubts, a relapse for Nick, one beer after a rowdy festival turning to blackout. Alexander found him slumped in the garage, wrench limp. I slipped. The stress, Harlan. The trial. Alexander knelt. No judgment. We get back up. Together. A redoubled. Nick's sponsor, a grizzled vet who quoted Hemingway. Courage is grace under pressure. Alexander attended open shares. Holding space. Learning the shape of Nick's shadows. Summer tested further. Lila's husband filed for divorce, citing the family drama as strain. She crashed at the B&B, wine-fueled nights spilling insecurities. Am I enough? Without the perfect life. Alexander hugged her. You're Hayes. That's legend. Nick cooked breakfasts, burnt edges and all, drawing her out. By fall, she dated a teacher from the center, soft smiles blooming. The distillery's pinnacle, a national award, Best Small Batch Innovation, trophy gleaming at the expo in New York. Alexander and Nick jetted east. City lights a flirtation unmet. At the gala, suits and sparkle, Ellis cornered Alexander by the bar. Still time for Napa. You belong here, Nick. Overhearing, tensed. But Alexander slipped his hand into Nick's. I belong with him. Kentucky's my vintage. Ellis shrugged, vanishing into the crowd. They danced instead, slow sway to jazz, city forgotten. Back in Bardstown, the wind parade was pickup trucks and whoops, Harlan's ghost grinning from the clouds. Yet climax's echo demanded closure. Tommy returned, parole violated, slurring threats outside the gates. You queers ruined everything. Nick faced him alone. Voice steady, go. Or I call it in. No fists, growth's quiet power. Cops hauled him, and Nick walked away unscarred, Alexander waiting with open arms. Autumn harvest brought reflection. Bonfire in the yard, Lila and her beau toasting marshmallows, stories circling like smoke. To Dad, Alexander said. And the family we chose. Nick pulled him close. Whisper hot. To us, winter's end. A proposal under the weeping willow. Nick on one knee. Ring a simple band etched with coordinates of their creek. Marry me, Alex. Make it forever. Tears. Yes, a roar. Wedding was small-town queer. Vows in the barrel house. Pastor officiating. Lila matron with flair. Rings exchanged amid cheers. Kiss ceiling. I do. Broken and bold. Years folded. Distillery a beacon. Kids from the center apprenticing. Lila's bakery adjoining. Alexander aged into laugh lines. Nick's hair silvering like good scotch. They mentored. Loved loud. Proof that from shotgun blasts bloom unbreakable bonds. In the end, home wasn't a place, but a pour, shared, lingering, human to the core. Under Kentucky skies, they raised a glass to the broken, the bold, the beloved.